Hi, I am Erica T. Worth, author of the Indigenous literary horror novel White Horse, which is out now with Flatiron Macmillan. And it is about Carrie, who is an urban Indian woman who loves heavy metal and loves horror, but despises her mother because she believes that her mother abandoned her when she was 2 days old. And when her cousin Debbie discovers an ancient bracelet of her mother's, and Carrie touches the bracelet, her mother's ghost begins to haunt Carrie, and a monster invades her dreams, and Carrie decides that she needs to find out what happened to her mother after all. And some of the inspiration for this novel is urban Indian life in Denver, Colorado. And it's also just, my love of heavy metal and horror, which was something where I went to school in Idaho Springs, people loved. And it's also a love song to old Denver.
Hey, it's Well Red Beard. I appreciate you being here. I'm back full time on my channel. I would love for you to come over and subscribe. Just search Well Red Beard on YouTube. I delve deep into horror. I've spent the last 3 years reading a ton of independent small press horror. There's treasure to be found there, and I go out there and find it for you. I'm not afraid to tell you the books that aren't great while telling you the books that are great. I don't break hearts or hurt feelings, but if a book doesn't work for me, I will tell you that, and I'll tell you why. I'm on a new mission now to go back and dig into some great horror from the 80s and 90s. I'm working my way through Robert McCammon's books. I'm going to look at all of Peter Straub's work. I'm going to do Brian Keene. I've got aspirations to go back and do J.F. Gonzalez, a lot of the greats, so you have a good idea of where to start. I have a video up for J.F. Gonzalez's Survivor, so you can see what all the fuss is about. I recently read Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian, so you can see what all the fuss is about. I just want you to come over and subscribe. I'm trying to grow the thing. I appreciate you taking a look at it. This is Well Red Beard. I hope you're enjoying all your books as much as I am. If not, you're reading the wrong damn books.
Welcome to Dead Headspace. I am your host, Patrick R. McDonough, joined always by my co-host, Brennan LaFaro. Say hello, Brennan.
Hello, everybody.
Today we are joined by our guest host, Rhonda R.J. Joseph. How are you? What would you like to be called on this episode?
I'm good. You can call me Rhonda. It's probably easier.
That's how I started. And I'm like, wait a minute. Okay. And we were talking to the wonderful Tananarive Due. Say hello, Tananarive.
Hello, everybody.
And I'm going to start with the baseline question. Then, Rhonda, please jump in. What got you into horror?
Wow. Well, I actually probably didn't have much of a choice because probably like everybody on this podcast today, I was exposed to it as a child. And I think as kids, you either really, really take to it or you really, really don't take to it. And I took to it. My mom, there's a poster behind me that you can't really see unless you have the video, but for a book I wrote with my mom called Freedom in the Family, a mother-daughter memoir of the fight for civil rights. And you might think, well, what does that have to do with horror? Well, she was my first horror fan. In my life, she was the one who had me watching those creature features. She was the one who got me my first Stephen King novel when I was 16, which would be The Shining. And she was super, super supportive of me being a writer, whatever I wanted to write. And I don't think it's a coincidence that she loved horror and was in the civil rights movement, let's just say, because I think we've started to figure out more that for a lot of horror fans, we use horror as a way to process all kinds of trauma. And in her case, I think it was very definitely racial trauma, just from arrests, experiences in the 60s, watching the clock turn back in real time before she passed away in 2012. So yeah, that's the very, very long answer to your short question about how I got into horror.
Rhonda, take us away.
Oh man, so I'm just so excited to have a chance to sit down and chat with you. I just saw your panel at the Candyman conference. The whole damn swarm. Yeah, that was like that was so amazing. Like to have you and Kenitra Brooks and Robin
Means
Coleman.
Coleman. It was
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, that was so amazing. And I think that one of the things that I'm always intrigued about, because I've been reading your work since you started writing.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so I mean, you are my absolute favorite horror writer, and
Thank you.
it's very impactful for me to be able to see that not only are you this fabulous woman who is writing horror, but like you are bringing this almost everydayishness to it. Because these characters, like for instance, my favorite short story that you wrote was The Lake. I was really excited to see it in horror noir. And
Right. Me
I
too.
guess the question that I would ask is, how do you balance that bringing like just this everyday thing to this fantastic?
Well, first of all, thank you for all the compliments embedded in that question. I truly appreciate it, and I'm just glad to still be in print all these years later. I started publishing in 1995, so I don't take that for granted, and I truly appreciate it. In terms of that, in some ways, I feel like it goes back to the lessons I learned young from guru Stephen King. In terms of how he approaches characterization in horror. Because my personal theory is that there are a lot of Stephen King fans who don't necessarily consider themselves horror fans. Probably couldn't name 5 other horror writers, honestly, maybe 5 movies, but not 5 writers. And they are just hooked on him and what he does. And what I think all great horror writers try to do is create a world, if it's reality based. Okay. I mean, fantasy is a little bit different, but if it's reality based horror, you want to create a world that your readers can touch. He was very famous for using brand names, of products and consumer items that people were very familiar with. Because that just, man, when I saw the word emergency, y'all are too young, but there was a TV show called Emergency. And it aired in the 70s. I was watching it later, okay? But I used to get all these Tiger Beat and Teen Beat magazines from garage sales, also way before y'all's time. But there was this. I love that show. That was my show. I would come home every day to watch that at 3:30. And when he put emergency, like there was a line where Danny is in the hotel and he said the hose jumped off the wall. It was like a hose from Emergency or something like that. It blew my mind. Like I was all the way in. And I think in whatever way, not necessarily by using the names of TV shows or brands, and that's not all he does, obviously, but in whatever ways I can, I'm trying to create that 3-dimensional world. You can feel and touch characters, like a lot of writers. Many of my protagonists are me, different versions of me. Me if I was younger, me if I were older, me if I was a man, me if, it's like you filter life through sort of me 2.0 and get all these different characters. So there is that, I'm trying to express myself through my, like, what am I afraid of? Who do I wish I could be like? Not the lake, but
right. I don't know.
No, that's about a monster in more ways than one. But it's populating it with characters you care about and a world that feels like our own. And my philosophy is once you have them with that, all you need to do is make a pencil roll across the table with no explanation, and that's scary. See what I mean? Like,
yes, I love that.
Like what?
I like that phrase. I've never heard that before.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, I
just,
love that.
I mean, never mind a rabid dog like in Cujo or whatever, a haunted house. It's like the tiniest thing that your character cannot explain or understand will scare the hell out of you, and that's when you've got them.
You're really good at. I actually just finished Ghost Summer for the first time earlier today.
Oh, thank you. Okay, good.
And you're really, really good at writing kids. Like the way you do it is just there's a lot of heart into it. But what I thought was so, I guess, magnetizing was the fear of not even supernatural, just of human monsters or day-to-day stuff that kids just don't know because they haven't experienced it yet. There's really no question there. Rhonda, I really want to hear, and I don't know how else to lob this to you besides you and Tananarive are both you both in the academic background. I'd really like to hear a question focused on that, and that's really the best I got for that.
Ask something really super smart. That's
smarter than I can ask. And I will like to say, because I know you're at UCLA. I didn't have the grades for it, but like like a lot of people, I guess my age or a little bit older, George Lucas was the big deal for me growing up, and I wanted to be a filmmaker. I still would like that one day, but I didn't have the grades for UCLA, but that was my boyhood dream school. It's just it's a magical place in my heart, and it's pretty cool that I can actually talk to a professor from there. So you're
and to have a horror class there. So
yeah, that's just like
cool. Black horror, the Sunken Place, it's called.
Yeah. Is that ever going to be a virtual class at any point?
What? How great you mentioned that. See, usually I have to insert the plug, but
because I want to be a part of it. I'm selfishly asking.
Well, when that course first dropped, and that's a whole story I love to tell if y'all don't mind hearing it.
Yeah,
because you see that
anything.
It's on my little list of questions, right? I
you
love
see
that.
these great prints behind me by the artist Francesco Francavilla, and one of them, he asked me what I wanted in addition to mine, and I said Jordan Peele and Tony Todd. So the Jordan Peele thing is huge. His influence on not just Black horror, but horror period, cinema period, really.
He's revolutionary.
So huge, so revolutionary. I'm a little sad about what's going on with Twitter right now, the uncertainty with Twitter, because it was through Twitter that I got to meet Jordan Peele, invite him to my class. I was just tweeting about the fact that I was going to teach a class called The Sunken Place, and the reporter wanted to write a story. The day the story came out, Jordan Peele slid into my DMs, right?
I love it.
And the day. And I said, I asked Monkey Paw, wouldn't it be funny if wouldn't it be great if Jordan Peele came to visit my class? Because I'm at a point now in life where I'm not shy about asking for things I want. I'm over that now. And like within 2 hours, he's like, oh, that would be funny. Haha, I could surprise them. And that's totally what he did. He surprised the class. So we were showing Get Out. It was the scene with Rose holding the car keys. Spoiler, people. Rose is not an ally in Get Out. I know it's a spoiler. I should have seen it by now.
That's on you.
She's dangling the car keys, saying, you're not getting these car keys, babe. And that's the moment we realize he has no allies. It was all a trap. And so the class is sitting there watching that scene. They're really mad. They're talking back to the screen. And then we put the lights up. And we had worked this out beforehand. So I can officially say that I have done a bit with Jordan Peele. And I'm claiming that. I'm claiming that because we had worked it out beforehand. I said, because he's in the hoodie and the baseball cap. So we had the lights down. We left the 2 seats in the back row empty for him and his assistant. And the plan was I would show that scene, turn up the lights, and then ask, what do you think the director was trying to say about the coveting of Black bodies? And then he would raise his hand. And that's exactly what happened. I asked the question. He raised his hand. I have a question. And he walked to the front of the class, and it was pandemonium.
Wow.
I just tweeted the link because this is back in 2017. I just tweeted like the only 10 seconds of his walk up to the front of the class that was made public. Because even though every student in that class had an iPhone, and one student did a whole Facebook Live, only 10 seconds made it out into the public, and it went viral. I mean, TMZ was calling me when I came home. Okay, it was crazy. It was like one of the craziest days of my life. And so much has come out of that, and that I've even forgotten what we were talking about at this point. But my class at UCLA. So that's all to say.
Virtual class.
So that's all to say that there was so much publicity around my UCLA class. He talked about it on Colbert. I mean, there were a lot of people asking that my husband, who's also a wonderful writer, Stephen Barnes, and I decided to do an online class for the public that wasn't tied to UCLA, no tests, although there is homework, but you do it at your own pace. It's a digital download class. And that was all just to say that it's www.sunkenplaceclass.com. And it's all online. Oh, and in fact, Peel did a class visit for that class. I mean, this was even before Zoom. It's a little time capsule now, because it's right before he won his Oscar that he did like a very informal interview for, I think we had maybe 12 students at the time. So it was incredibly special. And this is the last thing I'll say, because I'll never shut up if I keep talking about Jordan Peele. But every single time I've seen him talk about Get Out, and he visited my UCLA class in person at least 3 times, plus that Skype interview, he said something new and fresh and smart that I hadn't thought about and hadn't seen in previous readings. I'll give you just one hint. There was a biblical quote in the screenplay for Get Out, just like there was at the beginning of Nope, except they cut it. And they cut it. They decided they didn't need it. And Chris was named as a reference to Christ.
Oh,
That's what he said in that Skype interview that you get in my online Sunken Place class. So I'm telling you, it's like, what? He did his Obama impression. Listen. And also Tony Todd is a guest. So it's not just Peele, it's called The Sunken Place, but it's not just about Get Out. This is a course about the history of Black horror. And his movie made it so easy to present that, because it gives us sort of something to hold on to. Like, here's where Black horror is now. First of all, there's a such thing called Black horror. That's something that a lot of people didn't know. Certainly not film executives I used to pitch to back in the battle days. You cannot even imagine how Get Out changed that overnight. Overnight. Not only do they know it exists, but in their minds, it makes money. Okay, that's all they need to know. It's like, it exists, it makes money. Tell me more.
I got 2 things about that, and then Rhonda, please jump in because I cut you off earlier. The first thing I love, I think it was For Us. I could be wrong, but at one of Jordan Peele's movies, I saw him, and I think it was on Twitter. It had to be, because someone was saying it was like a thriller, and he goes, "No, this is horror," and he is, for lack of phrasing this any other way, he's one of us, and it's amazing. Like, he's a horror fan, right? And he's not hiding it because there's no reason to. And second thing is, I want to hear from you guys. Do you think that, in the sense of prolificness and stamping the industry, do you think that Jordan Peele is the modern day Alfred Hitchcock?
Whew, that's a tough.
I know it's not easy. I mean, like, that's a loaded question, but I just want to hear what you guys got to say about that. I'm interested.
I suspect he doesn't really fool with a lot of those kind of comparisons. So I'm not going to fool with it either. I'm not going to be the one out here spouting it off. He's doing his own thing. But I can understand why people would say that and feel that way. How about that?
That's fair. That's very fair.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that I would also not make the comparison. And I say that simply because what Peele is doing is so different that I don't think it's really fair to kind of box him in as a comparison to Hitchcock or actually any other filmmaker. We kind of don't know what the totality of his body of work is going to do just yet. I mean, we know what it's already done, but like, he could, very well like exceed some of these comparisons, right? So yeah, I don't know. I get it, but I don't think that I would say that just yet.
I was just trying to think of like the biggest name thus far in the horror world, but you guys make great points. So I agree. Fair points.
And I think the whole idea of their bodies of work being so different, Jordan Peele is the modern day Jordan Peele. Whether or not we agree with, whether he, with comparing him to Alfred Hitchcock, what does it matter? What he's doing is really big and really important in the moment. And it's cool to be living in the moment and seeing it and being able to kind of go to the theaters and see these movies as they come out and discuss them and attend Tananarive's virtual class if we are not, can't go to UCLA.
That's right. Sunkenplaceclass.com in case you forgot. Just being helpful.
I'll put it in the show notes. Brennan, do you want to go or Rhonda? I don't want to cut anyone off.
We've interrupted Rhonda several times. I don't want to step on her toes, so let's throw it there.
Fair enough.
Yeah, no, seriously, guys, I have questions. I did homework, right? One of the things that I wanted to ask was about how in academia, horror itself has kind of gotten a little bit of the short end of the stick. If we're not talking about Gothic writing, it tends to kind of be shuttled sort of under the rug. But now there are actually whole fields of study. I'm old enough to remember when there just weren't these things. So, what do you think about that? The fact that academia is really ready to let horror play, as a serious academic, discussion.
Thank goodness is all I can say. Thank goodness. And I say that for the sake of young creators, whether they're filmmakers or prose writers. For too many years, people who had that kind of proclivity were basically discouraged or outright banned from writing any kind of speculative fiction, science fiction, fantasy, horror. But also horror. I've seen cases where a student wrote horror and kind of got flagged for being potentially dangerous because his story was so violent.
Wow.
Who's making that call though, right? I almost hate to bring it up because I didn't see previous work.
Right.
But the story I saw was a horror story. Okay. So that's sort of, and I also once a few years ago worked under someone who used to tell a whole group of writers that he wouldn't read horror because it made him laugh. Okay, so that's where it started. That's with me. As much as I love horror, when I went to my undergraduate workshop classes at Northwestern University, and I had great instructors there. I learned so much, but also a couple of things happened during those 4 years. I got leached out of even knowing that I wanted to write horror. Everything that was taught was sort of contemporary realism, epiphany stories, where you come to a great realization at the end of the story, right? With all this, of course, there's the realism and the verisimilitude and the deep characterization and the attention to the language, which I love all of that. But not a lot of things happening so much plot-wise in those stories, right? And my very first day in one of those workshops, we were all supposed to go around and say our favorite writers. So I said Toni Morrison, who wrote Beloved, actually a ghost story, but that's not why I said it. Also many, just Sula and The Bluest Eye and Tar Baby and Nobel Prize winning. Everybody was nodding, even if they didn't know who she was, they would nod.
Right.
And then I said, and Stephen King, and the looks on their faces when I said Stephen King's name. I learned I better not say that name again. You know what I mean? It's like you're a freshman, you're trying to find your way. And I had a science fiction writer friend, same situation. So thank goodness for just the sake of the artists who will not have to wait as long to discover that they are horror writers, or that it's okay and in fact important to write and study horror. Dr. Coleman, I don't think she would, Dr. Means Coleman, who wrote the book Horror Noir that the documentary was adapted from, I don't think she would mind me saying this, but let's just say that she was not permitted to write that officially toward her tenure. Now, if you read Horror Noir, this is that's exactly right. Wow. You know what I'm talking about. It's a very academic book.
Yes,
it is. Very well-researched book.
Oh.
But she literally had to write that in her spare time.
That doesn't make any sense.
Because they would not accept the subject matter as being weighty enough to count toward her tenure. And this book came out, I think, only 11 something years ago. So this is not a long time ago.
Right. Oh my gosh, it is like the seminal, it's
Wow.
like one of the cornerstones of my own research work, right? Like I couldn't do what I do without it.
So
did
it's
she
been
put up
misunderstood.
a fight?
I don't, she got her book done. That's all that matters. And I believe it's just been reissued, or it's just about to be reissued, updated. So important. And just imagine someone, probably a lot of people, who don't have that burning ember of desire in them, right? Like she grew up knowing where Night of the Living Dead was shot and knowing that area and that history that was like a part of her DNA. But if she had been just a little less passionate about horror, she never would have written that book.
Right.
Wow.
Right. Wow.
So
that's
and a lot of people don't probably write things or pursue things. I'm sorry to go on and on, but I'm very excited, not just for me because I get to teach horror, and what fun is that? But really for the students, I'm just excited, and the artists. I'm so excited that their time has come.
Yeah,
that's a great point. That would be really sad if she didn't get to do that. I enjoyed the documentary, and I know that a lot of people get to learn from it. Night of the Living Dead, sure, you think zombies, but I needed to hear it from someone smarter than me what it was really about. When I was a teenager, because that's when I first saw it, but I didn't get it right away. It's important. It really is, because it teaches you history about the past. And I'm not saying this obviously to you guys, but to people listening that might not know.
Yeah.
Rhonda, did you want to actually hit up some questions from Facebook as well? Because I know that you got some directed at you for Tananarive.
So I know that one of the questions that I made note of that we got from Twitter was how do you maintain a long-lasting career in horror?
Oh, that's from Alma Katsu.
Exactly.
That's
that's
so
why
cool.
I stood out.
That's
I was like,
that's a famous writer and everything.
One amazing writer asking another one. Like,
I'm about to be on a panel with her at the Miami Book Fair, which I think will be after this airs, so it's still upcoming, which is great, and also a great question. And there isn't one answer to that question. I guess the short test answer I can give, and that's hard for me when I get going, has been from the very beginning. When I was an undergraduate, I wasn't just studying creative writing. I mean, in fact, that was sort of my shadow double major. My real major was journalism, because back in those days, that meant you could get a job. Back in those days, it meant you could get a job, right? And that was sort of my pact with my parents. Okay, we'll support you in this writer stuff, but you have to have something you can rely on. And in fact, as an artist, I need that security. I don't have a couch surfer mentality, right? So I wasn't going to be like one of those people who comes out to LA to strike their fortune sleeping on their friend's couch. That's not me at all. I was right out of school. I need a job. And I got a job at the newspaper. And I did that for 10 years until I was ready to try to write full time. But in getting to the answer to that question, I thought that was the dream. Man, that day I quit my job, I thought that was the dream, to be a full-time writer. And I did it roughly for 15 years.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, hell no. Because too much uncertainty, too many ups and downs. I really got to the point where I felt like I was putting my inner child out on the street corner to go bring home, the money to support me, while my adult self is at home chilling. It's what it felt like. I was like, no. Remember, you wrote your first 2 novels while you had a full-time job. The least you can have is a part-time one. I started ramping up my teaching. And I think to me, to make it shorter than it was, is that the combination of the security and the persistence is what makes the career that I want to be insulated from, is horror noir going to be a hit when it comes out, right? Or, is that book going to be a bestseller? Because so far on the New York Times list, no, it's not. So how do you just Stay true to your vision. Not worry about what the market is saying is popular this year. It's not going to be popular by the time your book is done.
Right.
Stay true to your vision. And the real, to me, the way to do that is through security, where I'm not writing out of desperation. And I'm not.
Oh, I love that.
I'm not strictly writing for money, actually. I mean, yes, I can get money from writing, but I write out of love, even all this time later.
I love
say
that.
a lot. Yeah, that's amazing. I actually want to go back to the beginning, because you had just briefly mentioned, we talked a few times about when you started, and you said that you aren't shy anymore. I respectfully disagree that you were ever shy. Specifically, well, one specific example, because your husband, who does the afterword for Ghost Summer, and seriously, like, that is the most beautiful afterword or forward I've ever read. You can feel his love for you. That's amazing.
Yeah, true.
I love hearing those things. But he does mention how you had talked to Stephen King to blurb your first book.
Well, okay.
That takes chutzpah, you know?
It does. But I mean, I was very, very lucky. There are very few circumstances in real life where I would have just run into Stephen King.
Yeah, okay.
So
fair enough.
I was, through my job at the Miami Herald, where I worked with Dave Barry, who was in the Rock Bottom Remainders. This would have been in like the mid 90s. Rock Bottom Remainders was a group of authors who played instruments in a band. And they were kind of legendary. And the author said, they'll be the first to say that they weren't super good, but they took it seriously and they tried hard. And I believe Stephen King played bass. And I believe so, either bass or guitar. I'm mixing up who played what. And I heard, again, Miami Book Fair, that they were going to be playing at the Miami Book Fair. So I took my shot. It was more out of fanaticism than anything else, because I play keyboard, right? And I'm thinking there has to be a way, if I could just be in the same like vicinity as Stephen King, life made, that was where my head was. So I talked to Dave Barry in the cafeteria, which is not something I usually did, by the way. I just walked on over and was like, hey, so I hear the Rock Bottom Remainders are going to be playing at the book fair. I play keyboard. I made my pitch. I'm just saying, I made my pitch. And in fact, I wasn't even pitching to play with them, because that would have been way too grandiose. My only pitch was, just know I too am an author and I play keyboard. And one of these days it would be great if I could be like in sort of, I don't know, what do they call the spring training, or like the minor leagues or whatever, like the theater leagues or whatever for the Rock Bottom Remainders, like one day in the future. Oh my God, wouldn't that be great? And he said, well, Mitch Albom is going to be doing vocals for the Elvis number. Do you know how to play Jailhouse Rock? I did not know how to play Jailhouse Rock, but I said, yeah, I know how to play Jailhouse Rock.
Yes.
And I proceeded. So you're right. That wasn't shy, but I can't even, it's kind of like Beyonce says she has this out of body experience character who takes over on stage. That was who I became when I realized that Stephen King was coming to Miami. And I had to figure out a way to try to at least meet him. And getting the blurb, I mean, after the meeting, the blurb is a far easier ask. Because I figured I had a choice. I could either get his autograph, which I wanted desperately, or I could give him a signed copy of my first novel.
Yes.
I decided to give him the signed copy of my first novel. And I have to thank, people like Paula Garan, who's an editor, and people in the horror community with the Horror Writers Association. He was just in the directory in those days. Okay. You could just send him a letter.
So weird.
Yeah.
Wow. Holy shit.
So they were like, send him a letter. So I did. And the day I came home, I was still working at the Miami Herald, and I had made my pitch. I have a book coming out called My Soul to Keep. I would love it. Would you please? Here's the deadline, which is always too quick. Would you mind? And it's okay if you can't, whatever. I made my pitch, and it was by mail, I'm sure, because by then, I hadn't seen him in quite some time, like months. So I came home from work. There's this envelope in my mailbox from Bangor, Maine.
Mm-hmm.
Bangor, it's like a mythic city in my mind, right?
Right.
From the Dark Tower.
And I hold it up to the light, and I can see through the envelope that the letter is only 3 lines long. Now, in the world of publishing, it's pretty well understood that if you send a submission to an editor and you get a letter back that is 3 lines long, that letter says, thanks, but no thanks.
Right,
Okay?
exactly.
It's not your moment right now. So I was resigned. I was like, oh, he can't do it. Of course he can't do it. He can't do it. He's Stephen King. He can't do it. I opened the letter. It says, Dear Tananarive, if I may, fancy, okay?
Yeah.
If I may, I thoroughly enjoyed The Between, and I would be happy to read My Soul to Keep. Steve King.
Oh, I gave you the Steve. Oh,
Wow.
you're in.
And when I tell you, I screamed. I
you did.
screamed in the parking lot. So yeah, but it wasn't, I was still very shy underneath all that though, and I still kind of have a shy streak, believe it or not. But yeah, in some moments I have been able to rise to the occasion. I couldn't write it out. I ran out of, I don't know, audacity toward the end. My son was very young and I had a chance to get on stage with the Rock Bottom Remainders, and I just couldn't pull that character out that day, that Beyonce alter ego character. I was still just me, harried and tired and shy, and I couldn't do it. So it's not an everyday state.
But you played Jailhouse Rock.
I did play Jailhouse Rock. I found out later that one of the guys, because they had a few ringers in the band who were actual musicians, so at least keeping the beat and stuff. And one of them had turned my sound down quite a bit. I understand. He wasn't ready, but hey, I triumphed, and I'll say this about it. Kathy Kamen Goldmark, bless her, was one of the creators of the Rock Bottom Remainders, and she's passed away, but her legacy lives on. She did a CD back in the day of several writers singing. Oh my gosh, what is the name of that CD? And I performed Proud Mary.
Oh, cool.
Which I had done again at the Miami Book Fair. And Warren Zevon did Ike Turner's part. We didn't record it together, but they mixed it with Warren Zevon singing Ike Turner's part. And I have to Google it because come on, it's called Stranger Than Fiction. Of course it is. Stranger Than Fiction, quite embarrassingly enough, it is available on Apple Music and iTunes. But if you want to hear me singing Proud Mary with Warren Zevon, that's the cut for you.
All our listeners are currently headed there.
Yes, I love that.
We've had a few people that have been blurred by Stephen King. S.A. Cosby, I think, was the first, and your story just takes it away because it's just so much cooler when it's through a letter. Like where me and Brennan are of that era where we could appreciate that. Like that's just way cooler.
Snail mail, baby.
Yeah, and then I had one more thing. We're down to 15 minutes, so Rhonda, you're going to take away for select whatever questions you want. If it's just yours, it doesn't matter. It's up to you. But I just had one more thing I wanted to comment on, and that's your story about Harlan Ellison, because there's a lot of funny stories. It's in Ghost Summer.
I told that story. Okay.
Yeah, and only a few episodes we had David Morrell and Joe Lansdale, and they were talking about Harlan Ellison, and Lansdale was making impersonations of Harlan Ellison, which I've never heard before. So we've heard some funny stories about him. Do you have any comment about that? If not, we can move on.
Well, I'll just say this briefly about him. I didn't know him as well as my husband, Stephen Barnes, who had known him for, I'm sure 20 plus years. But we spent many times at his home. And he did call me out of the blue, to not congratulate me on. See, that was the first time I had done that. The first time I gave anyone a signed copy of a book was to Harlan Ellison.
Oh, I didn't know
like
that.
like someone I didn't know. Like I was at a
Wow.
Horror Writers Association meeting, and I was like, and he was a rock star. I don't
Oh,
even
I'm
think
not shy. I'll just do that.
people don't understand. I was seeing him as sort of the older version of Harlan Ellison. But if you look back on the old tapes, he was like a really hip, to use the vernacular, rock star. And that is so rare for writers. I don't even think there's an equivalent of a writer now who was as much of a rock star in the public eye that Harlan, let me think, because even Stephen King tells a story about how someone was sitting next to him at a baseball game and got excited and said, "Oh my God, isn't that David Burney? Do you have a pen?" People are not seeing us as writers. You have to almost commit a crime to get in the news as a fiction writer. Okay, so he was a rock star, and it was jaw dropping to me that he would call me to correct mistakes in my book, which is exactly what he did. That's what he did. I mean, he was a writer's writer. Also, I have to say, in fairness, very divisive. And there are people who had very uncomfortable encounters with him. It really wouldn't be fair just to wax on and on about, all those stories of glory. He said what he thought, and he could be sharp with people. But if you were in his inner circle, no one was more generous.
I actually have. I love this. I have a bookshelf right there with favorite paperbacks and whatnot. And this is one of them. Harlan Ellison, Dangerous Visions. It's one of I think 3 in a series of his anthologies. For those that are just listening, check it out. And I love that story. That's a different kind of a very a different version than in your collection.
Is it? I don't know how I toned it down. Whatever. Anyway, it's all true. It's all true. Just I give him the book, and I guess my card was in there. I was pretty slick for someone who was shy, I guess. But,
you're talking to literally the biggest legends.
Called me. I mean, they called me out of the blue on a landline. It's just weird, and I was so excited that it was him. I was in shock already. But then he said, "I read your book." And I was like, "Oh my God." And then before I could even process that he had read my book, he was listing mistakes. Including one, and I think I might have mentioned this in Ghost Summer, one I still remember to this day. And not every writer will agree with this, so I'm going to say something controversial. But what he said to me was, always say "said" in your dialogue tags. Don't say exclaimed, whispered, shouted. Said. It screams amateur if you're not, because no one reads that. They skip right over it. And I don't, it's not necessarily an absolute rule. But I will say that as someone who's taught writers for many years, not that very fine writers don't. Whispered is very handy because nothing else is, you can't express a whisper without saying it was a whisper. But an exclamation point, you can see he's shouting, right? So you can I think he's right about that one.
Yeah,
advice I use to this day. To this day.
Rhonda, take us away. The last 10 minutes, please, miss.
So, okay. So, and this is a lot in line with a question that I wanted to ask, but also was repeated on Twitter. Who is the favorite character of yours that you've ever written? We won't tell your other characters what you say.
That is such a hard question.
Yeah,
oh my gosh. And you'd think no one's ever asked me that. I'm not sure. Actually, has anyone ever asked me that? That is fun. Not lately. Not lately, because the ones that I'm just going to cheat my way through this answer because it's hard.
You want me to help you? It's Angie. So.
I'm going to sort through my thoughts. I'm going to sort through my thoughts until maybe I land on someone. But in the meantime, I get to mention a whole bunch of different characters. So there was a time I would have answered Dawit from My Soul to Keep, the African immortal.
Okay.
Because he seemed to have a real hold on readers in a way that was very unexpected to me.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And to this day, so many people love Dawit that I kind of might have considered him a favorite, but he really was never my favorite. In fact, honestly, I thought readers would hate Dotweed. I had him do like the worst possible things I could think of. No matter what he did, they forgave. I'm not going to spoil it, but trust me, he did a lot to test this relationship. And readers are like, oh, but he's so beautiful. Like, you can't even see him. He's a character in a book. Yeah, that whatever you painted in your head is more important than what he just did. So I was trying to play with that line, like, is there any such thing as a good monster? This whole thing,
right.
And they just were like, yeah, there is. So
sure, you did it. You created him. You created
one. I guess my favorite. Let me say this: my favorite grown woman. I do have an answer. I think my favorite grown woman character. I have two: one grown up, one kid. Because I have to shout out my child protagonist. The grown woman character favorite is Angela in The Good House.
I knew it.
Yes.
You did call it. You did call it.
Yes.
I did call it.
I think she is such a badass.
Yes.
Is it fair to say that's a fan favorite book too?
I mean, it really still, for a long time, it was my soul to keep. I feel like The Good House is gaining ground now in more circles, maybe since The Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah.
And post Jordan Peele and Victor Laval and writers like that, the push to find more diverse writers. I think The Good House has found more mainstream horror readers than My Soul to Keep did. But back when I was mostly read by Black readers who didn't even know they liked horror, it was just Black books were huge in the 90s. There were all these Black bookstores, all these commercial books. And so a lot of publishers were just thrown against the wall to see if it would stick. It's not like they were looking for a horror novelist. They absolutely were not. They just thought, let's see if it'll stick. Let's see. Okay, we just did this romance novel. We just did this mystery. We just did that. Let's see. And it was a golden time. It was a golden, beautiful time to enter publishing. And during that time, My Soul to Keep was the absolute driving. I was writing book after My Soul to Keep, and everybody was still talking about My Soul to Keep, which is great. But also,
it's a good problem.
but I also wrote like some other stuff. But I think The Good House has reached the mainstream horror audience in a deeper way, which I hope will change soon. My Soul to Keep is in development, although it has been in development and in and out of development literally since it was published. So know that. But it has never been in development at a time quite like this one. Like today, I just saw a trailer for Octavia Butler's Kindred.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
If Octavia Butler couldn't get adapted, and what hope did the rest of us have?
Right.
So it's finally an indication, okay, this is opening up. This is a real thing where maybe it could, so fingers crossed. But Angela, and not to spoil too much, but to go from knowing absolutely nothing about the curse on your family.
Yes.
To figuring out what to do and how to do it. Listen, she is the one I hope to channel when whatever it is, because that's the thing with horror. It's not going to be probably a demon or a curse. Maybe, I don't know. I'm just going to say.
Yeah.
I personally don't think it will be that. Just me personally, or a ghost. Ghosts just want you to know they were there. But when we face whatever we're going to face, I think the reason I write these characters and the reason I read these characters and I watch these characters incessantly in these horror movies is like, well, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
What are you going to do about that?
Right.
Like I hate it when like in a movie, like 4 or 5 people are staying in a house together. There's all the shenanigans between different groups, different people doing their stuff. They're all having weird experiences. Literally no one is sharing those experiences with the other people. Right. They're taking that on their own burdens. Like, oh, no one will believe you. And then there's this magical moment in the kitchen or wherever where one person mentions something kind of shy and the other was like, wait, I saw that too. And like now we're having a meeting now. And that, I love that moment. I love that moment in a horror movie when they have the meeting, because that means they're going to try to figure out what the hell to do. And this is the thing I want to know. Like when the time happens, who do I have to be? How do I have to be? What shouldn't I do? Lots of examples of that too.
Right.
What shouldn't I do when that hits the fan? You know, I mean, the people bursting down your door may not be zombies.
Mm-hmm.
You still better figure out not to trip and fall and pick up something heavy. You know, I mean, okay, so that's my favorite adult protagonist. And my favorite child protagonist, you all don't know yet, because I have a novel coming out next year called The Reformatory. It's about a haunted reformatory, children's prison.
Okay.
And it's based on my real life family history. I have a great uncle who died at the Dozier School for Boys in Marianna, Florida in 1937. And I wanted to write nonfiction, but it's just not my thing. And plus, there are books by actual survivors out there. I said, I'm going to fictionalize this and try to fix it. Right? I'm going to try to fix it. So I set it in 1950. And Robert Stevens, currently the character, is named after my true life relative, my great uncle. And it's about this 12-year-old boy who is sentenced to a haunted reformatory where he's scared of the haints, but soon realizes that the ones to really worry about are the guards. Okay. And develops a frenemy relationship with a haint. And while his 17-year-old sister is working on the outside to try to get him out. So it's also a portrait of Florida history. What did a small Florida town look like in 1950? You know, where would you find a civil rights lawyer in 1950? That's what my father is. Oh. My father's a civil rights lawyer, 88 years old. He helped me write one of the scenes in a court in a judge's chamber based on his civil rights work. So Robert Stevens is my new favorite protagonist because that poor boy has to go through hell. I mean, you wake up and you're a Tananarive Due novel. What are you going to do? You're going to go through hell. But I think his journey, like journeys with a lot of child protagonists, it just has sort of more of a sense. I mean, it can be scarier because a child is in peril. But there's something about Robert's superpower is adaptability. Okay. Yes. And I think that's why I like child protagonists, because they are still learning about the world. So if it just turns out that part of this next stage is you have to deal with this curse or you have to deal with this ghost, that's just like, okay, now we got to do this. Yesterday, I learned how to ride a bike. Today, I got to go hunt down a ghost. So they just accept it in a way that adults, we get frozen and we're like, this can't be happening. It's like, yeah, it is happening. The kids see it's happening and they just charge in, right? Sometimes they get hurt. They don't know any better. But we are like, this can't be real. Hello. First thing you don't do in a horror movie is go into a coma when you're confronted with the killer, with the lines, this can't be happening. That does not help you.
Rhonda and Brennan, our time's about up. Do you guys want to do final thoughts and then say goodnight? Rhonda and Brennan?
That's okay with me.
Yeah, okay. I was waiting for yes or no. Okay, so we'll start with you. God, I was gonna say Miss Du, but I'm sorry.
Tananarive is fine.
Yeah, Tananarive. You're a professor, so I'm like, what do I? Okay, sorry, that's just my dumbass mind going.
Professor Du.
Oh.
No, that's okay, really.
Brennan, this is serious. So Tananarive, what do you think? What are your final thoughts? I'm sorry, I'm a little flustered around you talking in this episode. Some guests do that to me. I apologize.
Oh, well, I feel like I was kind of going on and on at times. I love horror.
Awesome.
I love horror. I love people who love horror. I think that there is a real relationship to our love for this genre and our level of preparedness. And, not to take it on too gloomy a turn, there's a lot of uncertainty facing us in this country, around the world, really. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of political corrections, meaning like things swing one way and then they swing back and then they swing and, so a lot of people are scared. And like everyone, I get scared. And what I do when I'm feeling scared is, besides donating to candidates or trying to amplify messages or, do workout on social media, I watch a horror movie. zombies, haunted houses, trips to the woods. I love that aerial shot and like where the car is on the lonely road and heading into the woods. I mean, it's a cliche, but that's the shot that tells me to keep watching. Okay, yes. Because I love. In fact, I'm writing one of those right now. I'm writing a treatment. Finally, where I get to have my aerial shot of the car going into the woods. I've been waiting all my career.
Directed by Jordan Peele. Fingers crossed.
Well, who knows?
That'd be amazing.
Hey, maybe one day directed by Tananarive Due. You never
know.
Yes.
Better.
Oh, yes. You never know. I've learned how to dream big. I've learned how to dream big because the world has changed a lot since when I first started even thinking about publishing, and anything is possible. Yes. So don't let people make you feel ashamed for liking horror, no matter what kind of horror you like. Mindless killing, that's okay. Redemptive horror, social justice horror, it's all fine because it's helping us cope. And on an unconscious level, it's helping us prepare to meet those real life moments that won't be zombies, but will feel worse. Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And who you are in those moments really matters. Mm-hmm. So I think we're all in training for that moment, but we're doing it in a way that feels fun and feels like a release.
Damn, well said. Rhonda, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just really excited that Pat and Brennan asked me to come on and kind of chat with you. Yeah, so thank you so much for your insights. Thank you so much for doing this work and for continuing it. It's really, really important that you're teaching, because that's how we keep these things going. That's how we keep the genre fresh. That's how we keep it from going stagnant, is to continue teaching and working within it. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you for that. I've enjoyed talking to you.
Brennan, go ahead, buddy.
Tananarive, you have been such a pleasure to talk to. We would love to have you back to talk about the Reformatory in June. I hope people will pick that up. And everybody else got a chance to gush, so now it's my turn.
He must have done some research, because I'm like, how do you know it's coming out in June?
Amazon.
He's a smart one of us too.
Honestly, I looked it up to see what publisher it was, to see if it was somebody that I could talk to about getting an early copy.
Great.
Ooh, I
loved this book so much. This is
thank you.
You know, when somebody talks about what books you need to read as a horror fan, what are must-read books, this is one of them. It's the rare book that is, I think my copy is like 595 pages, and it earns every one of them.
It's so long.
But it's so worth your time. It's not one of those like, wow, that book needed another editor or anything like that. Like, it needed to be 600 pages for that story, and I loved every minute of it.
I appreciate that.
And one more thing I'm going to throw out, because Rhonda is too modest to do it. I think everybody needs to pick up this book right here.
What's it called?
Hell hath no fury like Hell hath no sorrow like a woman haunted.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Rhonda writes like she is trying to just scratch the skin off and then, rip the healing scab off the wound. She does not hold back.
Wow, look at you. Didn't even mention you wrote fiction.
I didn't.
That's why you have us, Rhonda.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, guys.
Great, congratulations.
Now I got the hot face.
I just want to thank you I've wanted you on me and Brennan wanted you on for, I don't know, 2-3 years now. So it's amazing that we got this. And thank you to Jonathan Mayberry for helping us with that. And Rhonda, your reaction is just amazing. This show is, we couldn't even prepare to like connect like a big fan of someone you admire. Like, that's awesome.
Yes.
I was telling my wife about that before we started. I'm like, this feels good. I want to keep doing this. Yes. So I'm going to end there. I don't want to keep babbling on because I feel very silly with you smart people. Next episode, Next episode 173 is with Sina Palayo. She is the author of the I think she calls it the Children series. Well, Crime Scene is her latest, but Children of Chicago was a big one last year. And I don't know if she's going to listen to this, so hopefully not, because Rhonda is actually joining us again for that. She's supposed to be a surprise guest, but whatever.
Yes.
I just said it.
Well, you just gave away the surprise.
Yeah, I'm not,
I didn't even know that.
what did I tell you? He's a smart one of us, too. Thank you again, Rhonda. Thank you for joining us. Brendan, thank you. And listeners and watchers, thank you. Stay tuned for next week. And as always, you have many podcasts to choose from. Thank you for listening to us.